It's now time for the center stage Twitter debate. But before that, the big story. Political vendetta and a witch hunt. That's what the Congress's big boss termed the tax notices in a case related to the erstwhile National Herald newspaper. The Modi Sarkar squirmed at the witch hunt slur, hit back saying that no individual was being targeted, but the Congress is going all out to play victim as courts and the taxmen turn on the heat.
Are the Gandhis being targeted in a witch hunt? After court summons and a tax notice, Sonia Gandhi today mounted an aggressive fight back. The Congress president accused the new government of being politically vindictive by targeting her and the Congress in the National Herald case. She added that this kind of political witch hunt will only help the party make a swift comeback. While Sonia hit back, the government contested her claims. A swift denial followed.
The Congress leadership alleges that it is being victimized and targeted by the government. However, senior government functionaries have denied that claim. They have instead challenged the Congress leadership to produce a copy of the notice that was allegedly sent to them. They've also advised the Congress party not to don the garb of a martyr.
The Congress has been feeling the heat in the National Herald case. The list of 6 accused include Sonia and Rahul. With court shooting summons and finding prima facie evidence, the charges are beginning to stick. The Gandhis are in the dock for land grab, for running a fraud company and for diverting party funds to a private firm. The recent days have seen the Gandhis take the battle to Modi government unsparingly. From Sonia demanding the leader of opposition's post as a right, to Rahul himself leading the price rise war in parliament, to the latest witch hunt slur.
Hours after Sonia's attack, the Congress party admitted that the notice was not given to any individual, but boxed in a corner and summons from the court and IT officials snapping at their heels. The Congress is hoping that this attack from Sonia Gandhi will bring a relief to them and also energize their cadres to go against the Modi Sarkar. With Javed Ansari in Delhi, Ashar Khan for Headlines Today.
It's time to kickstart the center stage Twitter debate. Here's what you need to do to participate. The question that we're asking, and just see the way the question is framed very carefully, is are IT notices to the Gandhis and to the Congress politically motivated? That's the question. Here's what, just bring the camera in closer, please. Here's what you need to do to participate. Use the hashtag center stage, send your response to us, and we will carry your tweets live. That's how you can participate. Either you agree or disagree with this question. I want to introduce you to our guests for our debate this evening. I want to begin by introducing KTS Tulsi. He's a member of parliament from the Supreme Court, supported by the Congress, understands the nuances and the intricacies of this case very closely. Kanchan Gupta, BJP member, has been following this case. Sudhanshu Mittal from the Bharatiya Janata Party, also with us at this time, Sanjay Jha from the Congress. I want to kickstart this debate by going across first to Sanjay Jha, because the Congress is claiming that this is political vendetta. But Sanjay, for your claim to have any merit, I just want to recall to you what the judge in this case said. The Metropolitan Magistrate Gomti Manocha, while issuing summons to Congress leaders, said, I have prima facie found evidence against all the accused, which includes all the trustees of the National Herald Trust. Now, given the fact that the Metropolitan Magistrate has said that there is prima facie evidence against the accused, is it not only natural that the Income Tax Department will want to investigate this further? You've got 1 uninterrupted minute to make your case. Your time, Sanjay, starts now.
No. Are you talking to me?
Yes, I am, Sanjay.
You know, I think you better start your 1 minute from now, because I've just
Okay, your 1 minute, we'll rewind. Okay, we'll reboot the clock. You got 1 minute, and the question that I'm asking, Sanjay, is this. When the magistrate says that there is prima facie evidence against all the accused, how can you then suggest that the IT notices are politically motivated? The judge is saying there's evidence against the Congress leaders in this case.
Well, the simple answer is there is an element of political vendetta and vindictiveness because the way the entire process has been handled, look at the way the BJP is gloating by the sidelines. It is not just a private complaint. Dr. Swamy is a member of the Bharatiya Janata Party, so there is a clear-cut political complexion. And more importantly, you know, the Indian National Congress, when it gave the loan, an interest-free loan to the Associated Journals, that published National Herald, an emotional investment for Congress supporters all over the country, a historical legacy of India and our freedom struggle. We need to understand why we supported that. And no one is accepting the reality of the fact that the Election Commission rejected Dr. Swamy's attempt to say that the Congress party should be de-recognized for lending that money to the Associated Journals. It was rejected that it was not a violation of the Representation of People Act. So the truth is that we'll answer this in court. We don't have to justify anybody in a TV studio, but the BJP targeting the Gandhi family is their own political insecurity.
No, but there are two
and
or
this has
three
always
points,
been their constant
Sanjay,
strategy.
which you haven't answered, and I want KTS Tulsi to answer those before I bring the BJP representatives in. First and foremost, you've got a metropolitan magistrate saying in public that there is prima facie evidence against all the accused. Then you've got the basic case where the Congress is accused of lending 90 crores to a firm where the majority stake is owned by the Gandhis. Now, if the magistrate is saying there is prima facie evidence and the Income Tax Department acts on it, how do you bring in the element of political vendetta? The magistrate is saying that there is evidence against the accused, Mr. Tulsi.
Well, the magistrate is only the first step. He is, it doesn't mean that anyone is guilty. It doesn't mean that the Income Tax Department had to jump in on the issuance of the process. It is the first step. And this is not the last word. But normally the Income Tax Department would wait for the final judgments to come, and judgments have become final in fact. But the very fact that immediately after the issue of process, the income tax has decided to jump in smacks of some kind of a political vendetta. And I would like to say this, that the allegation, the principal allegation of the complainant Dr. Subramaniam Swamy is that the money which is given on humanitarian grounds actually to the Associated Journals, because they were unable to pay the salaries, they were unable to pay the Provident Fund, and people were not getting salaries. So, as a humanitarian gesture,
Okay,
if
your
the
time is
Congress
up.
Party has
I want to bring in Kanchan
time.
Gupta now, because I remember, and I have a quote over here from what Nitin Gadkari said on the 24th of January when he received similar income tax summons. He says, the Income Tax Department is acting at the behest of the Congress. When your former party president says that the IT notices to him were at the behest of the then UPA government, surely Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi have the right to believe that now that you've got a new government in power, either Modi Sarkar is getting this done, that's why the summons are being issued, or else people in the IT department are trying to please their new bosses.
Rahul, ever since this scandal broke, the Congress has been trying to obfuscate issues. They are mixing up issues, and both the gentlemen who spoke before me, they did the same thing. So I think for your viewers, we really need to separate and segregate the issues. One is the acquisition of Associated Journals Limited, and the second is the money which was provided by the Congress for that acquisition. Now, we have been told that it was done for emotional reasons, for humanitarian reasons. Now, that's a load of crock, because the building which was acquired, the property which was acquired, is now being used for commercial purposes. It is being used for passport, as a passport seva kendra, for which commercial rates are being collected as rent. So there is no humanitarian purpose involved. That money was used to just sack people, clear out outstanding
Okay, your
debt
time is up, but
before
you've
the
made an
takeover.
important point. That 2 floors are with the Tata Consultancy Services. The building is on rent with the Ministry of External Affairs. These are being used by the regional passport office, and market rate is being paid. The market rate is between 85 and 90 rupees per square feet at the Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg office. Now, if this is being used for commercial purposes, then surely you can't claim humanitarian and emotional grounds, Sanjay Jha. It makes no sense. You're making money out of this deal.
I think the BJP spokesperson who spoke before me obviously hasn't read the law very carefully. Number one, It's under Section 25 of the Companies Act. It is a non-profitable trust. It works like a trust. It's no different from an entity under a trust act.
No, no,
or the
sorry,
Societies
Sanjay,
Act.
we have heard that before.
Number two.
No, no, that is, you are
Let me
confusing
finish.
issues again.
Can
And the
I
income
speak?
tax was,
Can
income
I
tax
speak
notice has
without an
been
interruption?
issued. Sorry,
Can I
Sanjay, the
speak
income
without
tax
an
notice.
interruption? I thought,
Sorry, Sanjay.
Rahul, I thought your program did not have interruption.
No, no, only in the
Rahul,
first
I thought
1
your
minute.
program
After
did
that,
not
there is
have
a round of
sorry,
interjections.
sorry, Rahul.
No, but I want people
sorry,
to speak
Sanjay,
one by
you are
one.
again
Let me
obfuscating
explain.
issues.
Let me explain.
Okay, let
No, no,
Sanjay
let
Jha.
me
Okay,
explain.
Kanchan, allow me to moderate. I want
One
Sanjay
minute.
Jha to complete his
That is
argument in 30
charitable-
seconds, then Kanchan comes in to rebut. Sanjay Jha, go ahead.
Yeah. A not-for-profitable trust does not mean, I mean, this basic common sense and financial literacy, that not-for-profit does not mean not for income. You make an income, but you reinvest that into your business. Now, supposing if there is an asset lying which can be rented and an income can be derived, as long as that income is going to be invested in the objects of the company, there is absolutely no violation.
Okay, that's an
or
important
contravention
point.
of law.
Let Kanchan
And
come
this
in.
is what we'll be
That it
addressing
might be
in
earning
court.
income, but it's not making profits. It's not as if Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi are making a killing out of it.
The Associated Journals Limited was set up. There's a memorandum of association attached with the company, or there used to be, which was for publishing newspapers and journals. Young India is doing nothing like that. And again, this whole thing, the income tax notice has been served to the Congress to explain why money was diverted from the party coffer for a commercial purpose, which is against the law. I mean, political parties are tax exempt because they are not supposed to be indulging or participating in commercial activity. Now, whether it is for profit, not for profit, that is just a sleight of hand. The point is, Congress money was used for acquiring properties for a private limited company owned by Sonia Gandhi and her son Rahul Gandhi.
And that's the
that property
fundamental
is now
charge.
collecting money as commercial rent from Tata Consultancy and from the Ministry of
No,
External
but that's the
Affairs.
fundamental charge, and we haven't heard a response to that charge.
So
To
this
Sanjay
income
Jha
tax
first,
notice
to
is-
Sanjay Jha first, and then to KTS Tulsi. Congress money used to buy, what is supposed to be a trust owned by the Gandhis. Now you're claiming income tax exemption, but you can't do that given the fact that this is Congress money, which is tax exempt, being used for commercial purposes, being used to
not
buy
a
a trust.
It's a company. It's not a trust.
Let Sanjay Jha respond.
Well, Rahul, let me tell you, it was an interest-free loan given for the purpose of resettlement of debt, of all, basically liabilities to employees for VRS, compensation, etc. Around 700 employees, and that was something, by the way, did not happen overnight, Rahul. It's not that suddenly we woke up and discovered 90 crores of accumulated debt. This was over several years. This has been happening over decades. The National Herald was financially strapped considerably, and the Congress party was giving it financial support for several years. Please, at
Okay,
least somebody
let's
should have
bring
the
in,
confidence to
which
no,
understand
one second,
that.
allow me
And
to
one
bring
last
in
point.
Sudhanshu
And
Mitra.
one
Sanjay
last
must also
point.
explain,
That,
Rahul,
by the
why
way,
were
that is
9
a
crore,
settlement of debt,
why
nothing
were
more.
9 crore shares of Associated Journals transferred to the Young India company owned by Sonia Gandhi and her son, and not to the Congress party as settlement of the loan?
Well, Rahul, let me answer that. It's so totally absurd and illogical because Young Indian is a trust. Where is the question of the Congress president or Mr. Rahul Gandhi owning it?
Young
They're
India is a
custodians.
company.
My dear BJP
Young
spokesperson,
India- sorry,
the Young
Young
Indian
India
is
is a
represented by
company. Don't-
Congress leaders who are custodians and like trustees of those assets. Why don't you understand? There is no dividend, there is no ownership, there is
Young
no salary,
India
there is
is
no
not
perk,
a
there is
trust.
nothing.
Young India
And if
is
you
a
read
company
Section 25 of the
in which
Companies
Sonia
Act,
Gandhi
it's
and
got a higher
Rahul Gandhi
disclosure,
own
higher
76% of the
transparency than the
shares.
Societies and the Trust Act. These are fundamentals. I mean, you can't ignore the fundamentals that actually, by bringing it under Section 25 of the Companies Act, it's far more stringent disclosure, it's far more legally stronger, and it's far more transparent.
No, but
You can
Sanjay,
get all
you're
the
missing
details
the point.
on the ROC website.
First you're saying it's a trust.
It is
Kanchan
not
is
a
saying
trust. It
it's
is a
not a trust,
company
it's
in
a
which
company.
Sonia
It's
Gandhi
registered
and Rahul Gandhi
under Section
own
25 of the
76%.
Companies Act, and therefore it's not a trust,
It's
but
a
it's a
charity. Yes,
company.
it's like it's a
Under Section
It is a
25
company,
of the
yes.
Companies
So,
Act
unlike-
1956,
yes,
it's a
if it's a
company.
If it's a company, then why are you calling it a trust, Sanjay?
I know, but But like, it's a not-for-profit organization.
Never
it's a
mind.
charitable
That is not the
organization.
issue over
You have
here.
a right today.
Okay.
You can start a charitable organization under the Trust Act, Societies Act of Section 25. Section 25 is in fact more stringent.
Sanjay, that is not the
In
issue.
fact,
The
entity
issue is
trying to be more transparent.
No, but I think there's
Are you
a point
upset with
that's
that?
being made by the Congress, and on that I want to go across to Sudhanshu Mittal, who's been listening so far, that this is essentially under Section 25 of the Companies Act 1956. It's a not-for-profit company. It doesn't have commercial operations. National Herald, Sudhanshu, has a legacy. It was started by Jawaharlal Nehru. There were employees who weren't getting money. Therefore, the Congress bailed it out because of emotional considerations. That's the point that Mr. Tulsi and Sanjay Jha are making. It hasn't so far been proven that Rahul Gandhi or Sonia Gandhi made one naya paisa on this deal. Why then is the BJP trying to make it seem as if Sonia and Rahul have run away with this money when they haven't?
Rahul, few points.
Yes.
The assets of the Associate Journal is 600 crores. And if there is a loan of 90 crores, I think the assets can take care of the loan. It needn't pass out the assets to a Young India company owned and managed by Mr. Rahul Gandhi, etc. Secondly, the magistrate gives an order of prima facie guilt. And subsequent to that, the government acts. If this is political vendetta, I have a question to ask. Are the Gandhis above law? Are they God's gift to mankind? Third, for 50 lakhs you acquire properties worth 600 crores. I am sure Robert Vadra has the genius of making this kind of money. I think it is passed on to the Gandhis now. What is the purpose of taking away the assets from Associate Journal and passing it on to a company owned by these few individuals, whether profitable or non-profit sharing profit companies? Lastly, the process of law has indicted them and prima facie said you are guilty, you are charged with this, so come and take bail and all. Subsequent to that, the government goes and issues a notice saying you please explain this. If this is political vendetta, then I do not understand what law of land is. I think the income tax department is duty bound, and
Okay.
Mr. Tulsi says they should have waited for the last findings to have happened. Mr.
Okay, I think all our guests have made their opening observations and set the stage for this debate. What I want to do right now is play out the initial results of the center stage Twitter debate. Here's our question. IT notices to the Congress family, to the Congress leaders, politically motivated. Is it vendetta? 57% say yes, it is vendetta. 43% say no, it is not vendetta. So more people seem to believe that it is politically motivated than those who believe that it is not. And therefore, when a new government comes to power, Sudhanshu Mittal, the sense that's going out, and this usually on Twitter debates is the BJP that wins. Despite that, people who are watching seem to believe that this is a case of political vendetta, Sudhanshu. It's happening so soon after your government's taken over. It seems that people believe, not too many, but 57, which is almost 6 out of 10, seem to believe this is political vendetta.
See, asking legitimate questions of misappropriations or wrong financial doings, if this tantamounts to political vendetta, I think all governments must indulge in political vendetta. You just said Mr. Nitin Gadkari had called the income tax rate political vendetta, but what did the Congress say? No, the law of land is taking its own course. I mean, let's understand, this is subsequent to
no,
a
that's an
court
important
order.
point, and I want to go
This
across
is
to
not
KTS
out of-
Tulsi on that.
Yeah.
Because here, there is a prima facie statement, you can call it an indictment from a metropolitan judge, which goes against the Congress leaders. Secondly, the point that Sudhanshu Mittal raises, that assets worth 600 crores being transferred to a company that's run and owned by just a few Congress leaders, where a majority of the stake is owned by Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi. Those are legitimate questions, and if the income tax department asks those questions, surely it's within the right of the income tax department, Mr. Tulsi, to be asking these questions and for demanding answers. In fact, it can be charged that it's the Congress that is trying to personalize this in a bid to benefit from the IT notices.
Well, Rahul, I think that there is a fatal flaw in this case, and that fatal flaw is that Associated Journal's object was to be the mouthpiece of the freedom movement and to promote the ideals of democracy and the principles of secularism. The Congress ideals are exactly the same, and the young Indian has expressly the same objectives. So long as in this country propagating democracy, democratic principles and secularism is not a crime, I think this case is fatally flawed. And in this case, Dr. Subramanian Swamy has no love for the Congress. He has no trust in the Congress. How can he complain of breach of trust? The Congress party or the young Indian have not made any promise to him. He has not given even 10 paise.
No, but now, Mr. Tulsi, it's an income tax notice that you must respond to. Now there's an income tax notice that you must respond to.
Rahul, can I just come in over here?
Yes.
Quite right. Now, I want to say that the magistrate's order is just the beginning. It's the first process. Now, they do not wait for the judgment. This is not the judgment of guilt. This is ground to proceed. Ground to proceed is not guilt. And the income tax normally would wait not only for the final judgment of the court, but also for the appeal. And the judgment.
Okay, Kanchan Gupta wants to respond to what you're saying.
So that's why it's vendetta.
Mr. Gupta, shouldn't the income tax department have waited to see what the judge finally rules, not take off on his observations?
This is the point which I have been making from the beginning of this program, that an attempt is being made to conflate issues, to confuse issues, so that popular perception is distorted into believing that it's all about vendetta and vindictiveness. Now, Subramaniam Swamy filed the case long before he came anywhere near close to the BJP or joining the BJP. So, and that apart, I mean, we'll just for the moment keep the acquisition of Associated Journals and the properties which came along with it, which went to a company with a paid up capital of 5 lakh rupees, properties running into hundreds and thousands of crores of rupees. Now, that apart, the income tax notice has been issued to the Congress, apparently, presumably, because every political party is entitled to be tax exempt because their earnings or their collections are meant for use on political purposes, on political activity, not on commercial activity. Now, here is a case where 90 crore rupees was transferred or lent to Associated Journals, which was a separate company. It had nothing at all to do with the Congress. We can talk of the ideals of the AJL and the ideals of the Congress and how the two merge, but that is really not germane over here. The fact is that money was lent officially by the Congress party to Associated Journals Limited, and then that loan was written off. Now, this is a violation of the law that applies to political parties across the country.
Is it not? Yes, Mr. Tulsi, instead of appealing to emotion, should you as a lawyer not be trying to break this down charge by charge and giving us a cogent defense? What we are hearing is an appeal to emotion. What we are hearing is rhetoric. What we are not hearing from the Congress is an emotional a cogent defense. Is this not a violation of the law of the land?
No, I want to say that it can't be a violation for the reason that it continues to be a political purpose. Propagating democracy, if Associated Journals is unable to pay even the salaries for years together, and you have to bail them out.
Sir, the assets are now owned
there is an emotional
in most part by Mrs. Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi. 76% of the assets, which is about 600 crores, are owned by just two individuals.
Can I answer your question?
But the President and the Vice President of the Congress.
No, Mr. Tulsi.
And they are continuing with the political purpose.
Sir, Mr. Tulsi, the Associated Journals had nothing at all to do with the Congress party officially. Officially, it was a corporate entity. It was a corporate entity with its memorandum of articles.
Which said democracy.
And the Congress is a political party.
Secularism.
No, you can talk about secularism. No, you can talk about secularism. Supposing the biggest corporate house in the country talks about secularism and the Congress talks about secularism. So the Congress and the corporate entity become one. I mean, what kind of logic is that?
But those are the objects of the company.
No,
Those were the objects of Associated
It
Journals.
still remains a company.
Those are the
It's-
objects.
Nowhere does
those are the
the
objects.
memorandum of association of AJL
It
state
does.
that it is there
It
to
does.
propagate the views of the Congress.
No, but there's a deeper point, Sanjay Jha. And that
Democracy,
point is this,
secularism.
that you've got assets worth 600 crores which are now resting with two individuals, Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi. Now, they may be president or Congress vice president at this time, but there's a transfer of assets of phenomenal value after having written off a loan to two individuals who now own those assets. They may or may not use it for commercial
political
purposes,
purpose.
but they own those assets, Sanjay.
For political purpose.
Rahul, I request if I'm not interrupted on
Go
this
on.
channel when I speak, because there's been a lot of lopsided distribution of time here. So I want to tell you this in very simple terms. If the Indian National Congress lent 90 crores for the Associated Journals, it has a political purpose. It has a political purpose in it because it was given because National Herald was not just a Congress party legacy that fought for India's freedom, but was part of our team, our Congress people who wrote for the newspaper. Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel wrote for that paper. It's a pride of India. The BJP may want to shut it down, but we have a right to fight for it. Number two, why are you saying that Mr. Rahul Gandhi and Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, the Congress president, own Young Indian? There is no ownership. The directors here are like trustees under the Companies Act. Number two, the directors cannot get a pie. The value of the land given in 1938 will appreciate. But for heaven's sake, that land is not a grab. That's a ridiculous allegation. The land market value may go up.
Okay,
but the land cannot be
Sudhanshu
sold and used for
Mittal,
private
they haven't
profiteering.
encashed
It's a
it.
ridiculous
Naturally, from
allegation, and we
1938 to
condemn
now,
that.
the value of the asset, especially since it's so much land, will go up. You keep making it seem as if they're running away with the money, but they're not. This will be the final comment on this debate, and then we'll play out the final results. Sudhanshu.
Rahul, the genius of Robert Vadra would certainly pass on to them and they will know how to circumvent the law. Here is a case where their rented properties is generating so much of rental, 85 rupees a square feet. And this is just one property. There are properties all over the country. If the loan was an issue, they could have easily hived off the properties to pay the loans and pay the workers and everything. See, there is a deeper design. Young India does not commit itself to journalism, whereas Associate Journal is running newspapers. Here the entire design is how to corner real estate. This is an old game, we have seen it. And secondly, where is the objective of Young India which says we are going to do anything political? Here is it. The Young India objective does not talk about anything political. The Associate Journal's objective was to run a newspaper. Young India's objective is not to run a newspaper. It is only talking about democratic ideas. That's not a political endeavor. So when All India Congress Committee writes off 90 crores in favor of a Young India for 50 lakhs, this is no political purpose for which this money is written off. So sorry, such fraudulent deals I've seen day in and day out. You can justify, the magistrate has rightly caught them with the pants down, literally.
Well, this is a matter that a notice has been issued on. Now the answer needs to be given to that notice, and the summons need to be responded to without politicizing the matter. If the Congress has a cogent defense, it must present it in a court of law. Otherwise, admit that it was out of line and accept its mistake. Here are the final results. Can we have the final results up on our screen, please? Are the income tax notices politically motivated? Now it's much, much closer than it was earlier. 47% say no, 53% say yes. For the time being, it seems Sanjay Jha and KTS Tulsi have done a better job of convincing people who've been watching this broadcast. They won the debate, but just about. Just 53 to 47, that's the response. Clearly, a lot of people believe that the case is politically motivated. For the time being, Kanchan Gupta, KTS Tulsi, Sanjay Jha and Sudhanshu Mittal for joining us on the center stage face-off tonight. Thank you very much. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. is when we kickstart our live and continuing coverage of Modinomics Budget 2014. We will be at the CII Budget Headquarters. We've got 10 studios all across the country where we'll be tracking every dimension of Narendra Modi and Mr. Jaitley's first budget. Huge expectations riding on it. Will it be able to usher in Achhe Din, or at least show the way that will lead towards Achhe Din? That all through the day, right here on Headlines Today. Thanks for tuning in tonight. News and updates continue on the other side.